Welcome back, my beautiful book lovers. We're switching things up a little bit today because my friend texted me the other day and said, Kayla, what does FMC mean? And I went, what? Oh, excuse me? You don't know? You don't know these terms? And then I realized not everyone's chronically online in the bookish space, especially on like Booktok and bookstagram, like bookish creators are. So let me clear some things up with you, and I'll go over some main terminology that you're probably hearing around while you're scrolling, while you're on YouTube, while you're on Booktok, while you're on Bookstagram, and let's get this straight. Okay, so some common ones: FMC and MMC. That's your female main character and your male main character. So those ones are simple, and you're probably hearing those in like every single video that you watch, pretty much. Another big one that you'll hear a lot of creators use is DNF. That stands for did not finish, which means they weren't liking that book and they just shelved that shit. A new category on Goodreads, I believe they've got that set up for us. So that's kind of interesting. I am like a chronic must finish the book. It has to be pretty like I'm not liking it at all to not finish it, because I feel like sometimes authors tie things together at the end and I have a hard time just not finishing a book. I try to DNF more, but it just doesn't happen for me. But some people are chronic DNFers. If they aren't vibing with it, they're putting it down no matter what. Another big term you'll hear is ARCs, which is ARC and then a little less. You might see that popping up on screens, or people calling themselves ARC readers. That just means that they read advanced reader copies. So they're getting the books before the publication date, and they can do that through a number of different things. You don't necessarily have to be a big creator to get ARCs. Sometimes authors send ARCs to creators for free. Sometimes people sign up on things like, I think NetGalley is one of them, and you can get like advanced reader copies through there and give books reviews early. ALC is the exact same thing, but instead it's like audio. So it's advanced listener copy. So you got your audio version of it ahead of time. Another big one that you're going to hear a lot is POV. That one's pretty straightforward. I think it stands for point of view, which just means they might say multi-POV, means there's multiple points of view in the book. You're jumping different characters. If it's single POV, that would be more like ACOTAR, where you're only following Feyre, versus Throne of Glass, you're getting multiple POVs, especially as the book goes on. Good example. Now, TBR. TBR, if you hear this word thrown around, that is to be read. So if it's on a creator's TBR, it means that they are planning to read it. I don't trust my TBR because my TBR has went whack, okay? Some people don't follow their TBR, like myself, and they refer to that as a chaotic reader, in a sense. You know, if you catch me at the right time and I just finished a book and I'm scrolling on Bookstagram and I see someone I trust recommend a book that sounds amazing, that's my next read. Oops, for TBR's out the window again. I'm trying to be better about following my TBR because there are some books that I just desperately need to get to. Yes. There are some people that follow their TBR strictly. They are very organized. I like to think these people are a bit more type A. I salute them because good for you and I admire you. Then there's YA versus NA, which YA is young adult, which usually has more young adult themes. That might be more similar to books that you read as a teenager, like The Hunger Games, things like that are classified as YA. The Cruel Prince is YA. It's not going to have explicit scenes. There are still romances in these books, though, but they're not going to be explicit, and they're not going to be your spicy ACOTAR books. When it's NA, it's usually new adult, and that, I believe, ACOTAR is categorized in the new adult section. Now, there are some other terms that are thrown around that you probably are seeing. The MMC, male main character, is a golden retriever. A golden retriever character in general is going to be super lovable, and I think you know that term enough if you're online, but they are usually more lovable, kind of goofy. They'll melt your heart a bit. Whereas morally gray, they're not always making decisions that are necessarily good. They're not necessarily bad. We love a morally gray MMC. Now, if someone's recommending a sapphic romance, that means that the romance in the novel was between two female main characters. So if you're looking for a sapphic romance, or you're looking for some lesbian representation, then look for your sapphic romance. If someone says the book is spicy, you probably already know what that means, but the higher the spice, the more explicit the book. Now, some books might have more scenes, I guess, where the characters are going at it, but it might not be as explicit as other books, which is where people's spice scale kind of changes. For me, my spice scale is more based on how spicy did that book feel, because there's been some where the deed did not get completed, but damn, was the rest of it hot, and probably hotter than, say, The Night and the Moth, where there is an explicit scene, but it's not super descriptive. So that one gets like 1 chili pepper. Okay? But that rating scale will be a whole nother video, maybe. If you hear someone say it is a why choose romance, that typically means that the main character in the book has multiple love interests, and instead of it being like a love triangle where you're choosing between them, they might be just accepting them all, and they get to love them all. This could be 2 or more. Another term you probably have heard thrown around is indie author. This means they are an independent author, so they're not represented by a big publishing house. That's why when you see a video that says, here are some indie authors that you need to read, keep watching that video, because those authors are really relying on a lot of representation through social media for people to hear about their book. And some of these indie authors are absolutely incredible. There's so many good indie authors out there. Some of my favorite books are by indie authors, and they deserve the hype. But they're out there doing it all alone. They don't have this publishing house to help them with marketing. They don't have the support like that. So you see someone recommending indie authors, check it out. Now, if someone's recommending a book and they say it's very trope heavy, tropes are typically kind of scenarios that happen in a lot of books. Being trope heavy isn't necessarily a bad thing. Popular tropes are like enemies to lovers, one bed at the inn, you know, that famous one bed. How many books have you read with that in it? That is considered a trope. And if they say it's trope heavy, that might be one of the tropes in it. Okay. There's also micro tropes like he bathes her. That's kind of beneath that, but also a trope. If someone's describing a book and says that it is fade to black instead of open door, what does this mean? Fade to black means that you know that the deed's about to get done in the book, but instead of it being explicit on page, it's going to kind of fade away, and you're going to go into the next chapter and you're going to know it's happened. It's just not happening on page. Versus open door, if they say it's open door, then that typically means it's explicit. It's in the book. You can see it. You're experiencing it. You get all the details. All right. Although typically I hear more people just using like the spice scales for those two things, but you might hear that terms thrown around. Now, if someone says that a book is more character driven versus plot driven, what they mean by character driven is that the character's personal development is really pushing the plot. A lot of times character driven books are a bit more heavy on the emotional side of things. You're learning a lot more about the main characters, and they're what's really moving the story forward, not some external epic plot. For example, Shield of Sparrows would be more plot driven versus Bones, which is a fantastic dystopian romance with an indie author. But Bones is more character driven, especially the book 1, though book 2 does get more plot focus. But book 1 is really about the main FMC's personal journey. You're learning more about her, and that makes it a lot more character driven, and that's what's keeping you hooked in. I also think that the Legacy series is another one that at the beginning was very character driven, though it does expand on the plot as it goes forward. So sometimes they do that, but character driven books are still awesome. They give you a really deep understanding of the character's feelings and emotions. Typically, that's what's moving the book forward. That's what's keeping you engaged. Now, if someone's talking about a character arc, they're talking about the character's personal development throughout the story. If they thought that character arc was done poorly, they feel like the character didn't actually develop as the story went on. If they felt like there was a lot of character development and character arc was incredible, then they think that the character from the start of the journey to the end went through some transformative experience as they should, and they've grown. And I love a good character arc. And if you've heard people throwing around the term SJM, you should already know what that is. That's Sarah J. Maas, baby. That is the author of ACOTAR, A Court of Thorns and Roses, Throne of Glass, and Crescent City, though you sometimes hear Throne of Glass referred to as TOG. You should know all this at least, because I'm guessing ACOTAR is what got you back into reading potentially. But either way, you should be suited up for the world of book talk and bookstagram. So make sure to like and subscribe. I'll be back next week, and stay tuned.